could a participant expect their GP or consultant to present them with information, for example?
That's a great question. So, and again, I'm going to paraphrase, so shoot me if I get it wrong. Is this information widely available about the results of the study? And is it reasonable to expect that the general practitioner or your GP should be aware of the results? I'll start answering that by, I think it is reasonable. I think in the first instance, the study has been presented. There's actually several YouTube clips of Professor MacDonald explaining the study and its results in a lot of detail and in less detail. Secondly, there's a publication with a lot of detail on the way the study was run and the results again. That's published in a very high-profile medical journal, the Journal of the American Medical Association, during the summer. Thirdly, we're doing our very best through the Heartbeat Trust website, and I'll do a little plug for it here, heartbeattrust.org. And we're trying to put information regularly, updates on new developments with the STOP program, as well as the study results. So look, it's a little bit like everything in life. There's a lot of information going to the GPs, going to the health professionals that are looking after all of us. Most of your GPs should be aware that you're involved in the program, and it's certainly a good idea to let them know that you're involved, because I think that they'll be interested in it. And direct them to the website. The information is available there. And actually, I think it was yourself that asked earlier on, would the slides from our talk, especially Professor O'Shea's slides, which were fantastic, be available? And hopefully we'll get a selection of them up on the website online, so you don't need to take notes, and you'll have that information that you can maybe share with other people. Ken, do you want to add anything?
Joe probably likes to add to that.
I suppose just to hear me? No? Hello? Yeah. No. So I suppose on the individual level, when the study was running, there was a situation where people in the control group, it was known as a blinded study, so the GP wouldn't have known what was happening there. Since the study has become a clinical service, your GP now will receive a letter with all your results every time you're seen. So from this year, it'll all.
As well as it is often the case, for example, that you have cardiology care through another cardiologist other than one that would be working in St. Vincent's, and the information is sent to that other cardiologist as well.
And to your diabetic?
Well, most of the diabetic information will be all funneled back through Professor O'Shea's service or one of his colleagues in St. Vincent, St. Michael's, Colin Kills. So it should go back.
My name used to be Mark. I'm going to call myself Mike from now on. I'll come down to you. Repeat your question. How are you?
I'm glad to be here. I'm a diabetic patient myself, but my question really is maybe to the professor and to the minister. If this protein that you've discovered in the clinical trials is so important, surely it then becomes important to offer that not just to diabetic patients, but for anybody over the age of 40. Is this the aim of the Heartbeat Trust for the future?
It's a great question. Ken?
Absolutely is the short answer to that. It's none of these steps will occur overnight, and I think this evolution is actually occurring at a pace that's gathering speed now over the last period. But the plan would be that we will not be confining this to the Eastern Seaboard or even to the Midlands, which has been a recent seed of the service. That we have plans to work with the HSE, with the department, and with our colleagues around the country to bring this service nationally, because fundamentally it improves quality of care and it has the added major attraction of reducing the cost of care.
And of course,
The second question to the minister.
I've had the opportunity to discuss these issues with Ken and with his colleagues here on a number of occasions, and you have a plan to expand and to improve the access to these services and to everything, all of the achievements that have been you've been hearing about this evening. I'm a minister in a government that has a lot of, as you know, faced a lot of calls on financial resources. But for me, This is exactly the kind of initiative that we should be supporting in the healthcare service. Exactly the kind of initiative we should be supporting. And I think it was Professor Shea or some of the speakers, all of whom, by the way, can I just say, because I will have to leave just when I make these few short remarks, all of whom I admire enormously in what they're doing. Because they're taking forward their own knowledge and their own expertise into an area of public spiritedness, as well as actually expanding what they're doing themselves clinically and professionally. They're actually reaching out into the community, advocating for a new model of healthcare, and then looking to the government, quite rightly, and just as the gentleman at the back is as well, I'm sure everybody in the audience here, looking to the government to actually help and support financially in order to extend it. But can I just say, at the risk of saying the kind of thing that politicians always say, but unfortunately it's the truth, that politicians or governments don't have pots of money that the people don't give them. So you also have to become advocates for this change. You also have to pressurise people like me, but not just me, because I'm kind of convinced at this stage, although I'm only in this job for a year, I didn't know very much about these things at all, other than just as a normal citizen. But now that I'm in the job, I've listened to people like you've heard this evening and others. So I'm convinced, but I actually also have to convince other people in government. You know, I've got to convince people of the importance of involving the whole community in issues like, for example, curtailing alcohol consumption. And I can tell you it isn't that easy to persuade colleagues, including sometimes colleagues in government who have genuine pressures on them. And I don't mean just sinister commercial pressures, I mean other pressures as well. I can't remember in the years that I've been a TD or a councillor, very many people ever pressurising me in relation to cycle lanes, for example. I get pressures and emails about a lot of things. Or when people get on to me as a politician about health services, certainly in the past, what people are most worried about is a hospital, for example. We haven't had, I suppose, too much of it in the city here, but if you look around the country, hospitals closing. And we think the politics of healthcare is all about people being defensive about a hospital closing or changing its services. But that's the politics of 20 years ago. Like, just look at what we're talking about this evening. We're trying to change the model of healthcare, which is getting it out into the community, resourcing it in the community, and giving people like us, all of us, I mean, you know, personal agency over our own health. The government has to support that. But it can only do it because politicians are, you know, you might think we're very weak, but it's not so much that we're weak, but we respond to pressure. So pressurise politicians to not just be people who are worried about a particular hospital closing or a service being removed, but that will actually be expansive about healthcare, do the kind of things that the man at the back has asked for, and the other people here are asking for, and change the way we all look at our health and our well-being into the future. Because the system shouldn't be just about, going on a bit now, the system shouldn't be just about curing people who are ill, although it has to be that. But it has to be about preventing illness in people, those of us who are at risk of becoming ill, to stop that happening in the first place. So healthcare is what we're talking about, not just curing people who are ill, but preventing people from becoming ill in the first place, or those of us who are at risk of it, to try to keep ourselves and keep us as healthy as we can for as long as we can. And that's a political issue. Believe me, that's a big political issue, but it's as much over to you as it is to me, although I'm not trying to shirk my responsibilities either. Thanks very much.
Yes, gentleman here. How are you? Just give me a chance to get over beside you here.
I found this a difficult question to put. It's more a statement. Okay. At what stage does somebody be? No, let's go another way at it. We all know that when we go into hospital, one of the early questions we're asked, is there a history of whatever your complaint is in the family? And in my case, yes, there is. Now, when do I become aware that I am running into danger at a certain point? Is it not feasible that very early on, when you start to see a doctor for maybe nothing, just a common cold, that he says, look, that he advises, you are probably going to become a diabetic at a certain point, or you may run into heart problems, and this could probably be better done via the parent. So that if you want to avoid that, I'm sure you do, then this is the way you're going to have to eat, this is the way you're going to have to exercise, and so on and so forth. And the more you do it now, the more you start it at a very early stage, the more, hopefully, you will avoid those problems.
What's your name, sir?
Louis Lenton.
Louis, I think you've just described the future. Does anybody want to comment from the panel? It's an excellent question.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really, that's almost the kind of theme and tone of what the message we are trying to get across. That, you know, insulin was discovered 100 years ago. So in the overall scheme of things, that's not a long time. So we've gone from having absolutely no treatment whatsoever for diabetes to having very good treatments for diabetes to realizing that by far the best thing to do is to prevent people getting diabetes in the first place. Hence the American Diabetes Meeting last year given over to preventing diabetes. And the way to, and 80% of type 2 diabetes is preventable through keeping physically active and being a normal weight. So that's massive. But it's, and the at-risk people, so a family history or people who can't be physically active or people who put on weight for whatever reasons, that can be identified years before the diabetes, and extra prevention strategies put in place. But it involves a kind of a lifelong wellness plan, you know, that is there from the very start. The parents are involved with their kids in terms of keeping their kids active. But we do have a generation where we have missed that boat, and that's the problem. So we have to kind of start over and go from the kids of today and the kids of 10 years, you know, the next 10 years, keeping them well from the start. Do you want to add, Joe?
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. I think the lifestyle measures are really a huge part of any intervention for any chronic illness, and it's one of the other big changes. And I think it's one of the hardest things, I think, to try and crack. What will get people to change their lifestyle? There's a program in general practice called Heart Watches for people who've had a heart attack before or have had a bypass. And they're seen 4 times a year, and they get very intensive lifestyle coaching and medication management. And we know that their blood pressure improves dramatically, that their cholesterol levels improve dramatically, but you know, weight doesn't change, you know, and smoking doesn't change. And so it's very easy to prescribe medications for all of that, but I don't know if we have the solution as how we can get people to change their lifestyle, even if they've already had an event. So to try and convince people who haven't had that yet is even more difficult. But I think that's what we need to do, and how we do it is really how we try to find it.
That's all very well, but what about getting in before there's any sign of diabetes or heart problems which are going to come up in the future, and probably will, if somebody is not made known at a very early stage, or as early as feasible. I have no idea what that stage may be. That literally the parents are warned and the GP knows that I've got to keep an eye on this person before they develop any problems whatsoever, if that can be done. So there should be almost a stock interaction between young patient and doctor.
Well, it is interesting in one respect. If I could just use a little example of a major public health problem we have in this country. It's not diabetes, but diabetes is about to challenge it. And that's the issue of high blood pressure. The problem is that half the people in this country who have high blood pressure are not aware of it, because it basically is an illness that doesn't produce symptoms until it's too late, you could say, or until it produces the ultimate symptom of heart attack or stroke. So half the people with blood pressure, high blood pressure in this country and in other countries, are not aware of it. And the reason is we don't take the responsibility to go and get our blood pressure checked. Yet we can't, and people who know me in this room are saying, oh my God, he's not going to use the same story again. You can't drive a car in this country beyond 4 years old without having an NCT. And if you're stopped and you don't have your NCT badge, you're penalised 2 points in your driver's license because you haven't got your car checked, your engine checked, which supposedly is important for the health of the country. I'm not so sure that's ever been shown. But care of hypertension is fundamentally critical to the health of the country, in particular to a diabetic population, but you can go 5 years over the age of 40 without getting your blood pressure checked, and you don't get any points in your license, you don't get penalised in any way, and there's no incentive to get your blood pressure measured. Now that's a huge contradiction in my view with regard to how we're running healthcare. Now the civil libertarians in the society or in the room here might say you can't force people to get healthcare intervention. I don't know what the way around it, but maybe there's a way of incentivizing us to get it. But it's a fundamental problem, because the earlier we get the smell of a problem, the more we can do for it.
Get here, and then I'll come to you afterwards.
Thank you. A lot of stress was put on earlier in this meeting about the relationship between the professionals and the individual patients and how we need to work together. Do you think it would be important when we get figures of our blood pressures, our blood content, etc., if there was greater explanation of what these figures actually mean, what the trend means, and a lot of us, I think, go and we get a whole lot of pills from the pharmacists, and we have no particular idea of how those pills actually work in the body and what is their significance. Should there be greater explanation of these from the professionals to the patients so that we understand more about what we're trying to achieve?
Yes. And I mean, we started to run a course about 10 years ago now for diabetes, type 1, where we explained to people about the in-well A1C, the systolic or top reading of the blood pressure and the bottom reading of the blood pressure, and what we wanted it to be, the cholesterol and different types of cholesterol. What we asked them to do was to start coming to the clinic with a little list that they wanted to check themselves. So they were coming to the clinic, because you now go to a clinic and there's probably about €1,000 worth of blood testing done before you come, between the A1C and cholesterols and all those other tests and the urine protein test. So you need to be a participant in the middle of that. And so when people would say to us, you know, I see different doctors every time, and that can be a problem. If you are in the driving seat from the Formula One, and you have your list of your questions, you come out of that clinic with all the information you need, and you understand it, and you can look at the trends, and it makes a world of a difference to how you get onto the clinic, your understanding, and then how you are likely to change behaviour. And we have a more recent one then with the diabetes type 2, the expert program, which some people in the room may have participated in. And that's meant to give something similar around understanding, proven to make a big difference. So I think that is the future, and I'm not sure how well it's done in the cardiology clinic, whether it's a structured kind of way.
Well, I think the other interesting point along that might go some way to answering the question within the STOP-HF project is that the BNP is something that we talk more about to patients. Now, I would just put a little government health warning. I think it's unreasonable to expect a lot of the practitioners outside of the cohort that work with us in the eastern coast to understand a whole lot about natriuretic peptide, because it's just getting out there. But the interesting thing is that I think the patients, when we explain it, and I know when Elaine explains and Mags explains the natriuretic peptide level, or when I'm explaining it, we do try and emphasize the fact that it implies a higher risk of running into a heart problem. And I think the impact of that and the patient understanding that has a benefit, because we saw from the STOP-HF project very strong indirect evidence that people whose natriuretic peptide was high, and therefore they were told they were at a little bit extra risk, they began to take their medications more reliably. And how we know that is that their cholesterol fell over the period of the study without any change in the cholesterol management in terms of the medications. So I think involving patients and letting them know what the signals mean, you're low risk, you're intermediate risk, you're at higher risk, allows the patient to take control of it and say, well, what can I do to bring myself down that risk ladder? Or what can I do to stay nice and low risk? So I think that type of interaction is critical.
Thank you.
I'll come down to the end. Do you want to? Yeah, just give me 2 seconds here.
I just wanted to go back to the obesity problem. I think that our children from very young should be educated in what to eat and what not to eat. I think when they go to the schools, like where I'm from, Gorey School, the vending machines should be banned from the school. There shouldn't be allowed Coke or sweets or any kind of processed foods in the grounds. They shouldn't allow shops, which one has been opened right down at the playground. They shouldn't be allowed. So if we educate the children, it'll do a lot for us.
Absolutely.
And that is exactly what I want everyone here to be talking to the politicians about. You know, they have granted planning permission and there's to put a McDonald's beside the school in Greystones, and to put a KFC beside a primary school in Navan. And we know that is linked to childhood obesity rates. We have that information. The OECD and the World Health Organization have said, don't do this. And we're still doing it.
It's very extraordinary. There's a couple of really interesting initiatives around that. I see that in the school where my children are going. I think coming from On Board BIA about stepping out, and they've given kids little pedometers so that they can measure the number of steps and how active they are during the day. And you know, kids love games and they love scores and they love competing. And I've seen a huge impact of this. But I think that there's more education and initiatives like this needed.
Yeah, hi. I'm a teacher and I teach in a boys' school here in Dublin, 600 boys. In the school at the moment there are 3 boys who have diabetes. There are countless others who are pre-diabetic and are doing nothing about it. Their initiative and what drives them are the points. They want to be doing medicine. As a result of dropping sports and poor diet, they are concentrating on their studies, however, to the detriment of their health. I don't think it's acceptable. I know Conor was involved in something a few years ago on the TV. Was it on the TV where he was doing sort of, they were doing blood testing in supermarkets and in shopping centres. It was on the...
You're talking about his good-looking brother.
Oh, Conor's much better looking, sorry. Anyway, that's right. But it was very good, so why not bring that into the schools? I'll let you into my school. I just won't tell the headmaster. But come into the school, they need to be frightened. They need to know this is the consequence. I know of a kid last week who was told he was pre-diabetic. His parents are both doctors, and I saw him coming out of the shop. We don't have a shop near the school, but I saw him down the road, 10 minutes from his home. He'd stopped off to get sweets on the way home. That's the problem.
It's about education and balance.
I do think just, and because you got my name wrong, you can't have my slides, all right? I do think that's a massive issue. I mean, the kids' generation coming up is just the biggest challenge we face. You know, I don't even know where to start except to say there needs to be some recognition of physical education at the level of a Leaving Cert subject as they move to continuous assessment through to junior cert. They really have to try and prioritise physical activity within that, so we get our kids to 18 at a normal, a healthy weight and physically active. But at the moment we're failing them desperately, and we just need more and more action in that.
Yeah, I'll be back to you in a second. This gentleman here.
Sorry, just on that education about physical activity. When we were young, you know, you did sport, but you didn't do it to extreme levels. What I can see now is if people who go to extremes, like we look at our rugby team, great warriors, but they're wrecking themselves. And young people are actually, a certain amount of them are pushing themselves to the limit, like our Lance Armstrong and that bodybuilder. And then others are sitting back, becoming spectators and watching these. Well, if everyone was doing a reasonable level of exercise, they'd be much more healthy. Because I don't think a person who's winning a gold medal in the Olympics is particularly healthy. You know, I don't think I think if you do exercise to a certain level, you optimize your health. But if you push yourself further, you're probably doing damage. I would thought.
We now make a start on this because if you get me going on this, but there is no precedent. So if you name anything that's good for you, so getting your blood pressure down is good and very important. But if you get it too low, it's not good for you. Doing some level of physical activity is good for you, but doing too much is bad for you. And as a population, we are separating out into the super fit and the super fat. We have at the extreme end of sedentary 1200% increase, and you have Ironman triathlons going on everywhere that are not good for you. So it is all about moderation, and it's all about educating people not to be extreme, but human nature is very addictive. So human nature is addictive, and your point about the rugby players, I mean, the thriller in Manila, Muhammad Ali against Joe Fraser, was it? Yeah. Brian O'Driscoll and Gordon Darcy are heavier than Ali and Fraser were. And they were the world heavyweight champions in 1970-something. And we now have Irish backs who used to be thin and lean have that size and proportion. And that isn't natural, you know, and it's not good long term.
Extraordinary. I promised you that I'd have it finished by 1:45. We're well beyond that, so we'll take 2 quick questions.
I'm going to be rather bold in my comment here. We arrived here tonight and we were entertained inside, and on the table were beautiful tins of biscuits. And here we are trying to come to grips with diabetes.
That's it. Do as we say, not as we do. Yeah. I have another question here. Hi, how are you? Sorry. Hi, how are you?
I just wanted to ask where they were mentioned, I wanted to say in the blood, is that recorded in the normal blood test that you'd have before your consultation for diabetes? Is that recorded normally? Is it one of the things that's recorded?
That's a great question. Ken, do you want to take that?
It's not something that would be routinely done in a diabetic assessment around the country or in the Western world. It'll be done in the diabetic assessment through the link that we have with the diabetic services in this area, and it's done now as part of the diabetic assessment in the Midlands as a result of the link. So I don't think we should in any way call this standard of care and in any way reflect on people who are not doing it as falling short of standard of care, because this is an evolving intervention that we're beginning to learn a little bit more about. We're happy that it's telling us a real story, but it would be unreasonable for us to anticipate that suddenly that message will translate into Mallinhead down to Cove and from Dublin to Galway. Not all diabetic patients in St. Vincent's have linked in with us as yet. And again, that's a resource issue, because as those of you who know have come to the Stop HF service, it is resource intensive in terms of what we're doing. So we have to try and expand our capacity to take more patients. And that's something that we're linking in with Professor O'Shea and his colleagues on.
Thanks very much to everybody. I really promise now we're going to kind of wrap it up. And I just say two really important things. First of all, I would like to thank you for coming here tonight and for giving us your feedback and giving us your thoughts and questions. But even just by coming here, we're just so delighted. Ken and I have been running the Heartbeat Trust along with our colleagues here that you know probably better than me for the past 9 years. And we only did our first, we'll say, public meeting 6 weeks ago. And we were just so overwhelmed by the response that we're having another one tonight, and we will have another one. And hopefully it won't be another 9 years. We're going to try and do an annual meeting like this, and we really encourage you to come and to try and be involved in shaping what we think is the next generation of healthcare. And it's about prevention. And I would also like to just echo a call to action from the Minister. We were very lucky to have him here tonight, and we're very lucky to have his support. But every year, the Heartbeat Trust, at this time of the year, goes through a nervous period where it's hoping and waiting for the support of government for the following year. And we're living, like many parts of government, on a year-to-year basis. We're very dependent on the support that we get from yourselves, from the public. We're very lucky to have funding which covers about 1/3 of the cost of running this program, which is pretty significant. And in terms of providing going back to the last question, the BNP test is not routine. It's not routine in most hospitals, so we actually have to fund that from the Heartbeat Trust Conference. We're very lucky to have European Commission funding for this project right through until 2017, which is fantastic. And going back to one of the first questions, we intend to run this project for as long as you'll still come and be involved in it. But we do need your support, and we do need your advocacy. And the Minister said it here tonight. Don't just take his word for it. Go and knock on doors. And when you get a chance, talk to your politician about the work that we do here. And thanks very much for coming. Good night.